Hey folks, it is Thursday. Beautiful day out here. Just got back from the place that I upload videos for you. Oh, rooster stew. And, rooster moment. Not a squirrel moment, but a rooster moment. And so I get back and, I told you I want to start doing a video for you here on building some high frames. And so I got a little bit of time and it's running short real quick, so let me see what else I can get done today. First off, let me catch you up with what I've got going so far. So I want to show you, I bought 4 2x12s that were 8 foot, and those 4 2x12s were about $7.50 a piece. That's what it cost me where I'm at to do that. And you can see I've already got some stuff done here. One of the first things I did with those 4 was run them through a planer, just enough, and the thickness does not matter at this point, to get it sorted out. So what I did was I ran them through a couple times on one side, then I ran them through a couple times on the other side, and what I wanted to do was clean them up. I wanted to clean the boards up from the slight defects that were in the delivery and manufacturing of just the construction grade, and I wanted to get it down into something a little bit flatter, a little bit smoother, and prepared for what we're going to do. So out of those, 3 of them are sitting right here. So Mr. Rooster, who wants to be soup, is sitting on top of my long hive there. I told you I'm going to build a couple of those here again pretty quick with some new modifications to them just to tweak them up a bit. But these are 44 inches long, so there's essentially one, there's the other, and that's the third. And then the 4th one is going to work towards some high frames. Now, I pulled out a high frame so that you can see what we're looking for in the way of pieces. I made some mistakes on this batch of them right here, so they don't have a mortise or a rabbit in them. They were cut and notched a little bit different. We're gonna do it the way most of the Langstroth hives are, so this piece will come out more full. You'll see that as we go, and we're going to do everything here on a table saw. So I've got one 8 foot 2x12 that I have cut down or planed down and then cut up and sectioned for the right amount of pieces. Now, if you're going to do this, you may want to get a little bit more material than what I've got. Alright, so I have calculated based on, this is a piece of scrap from the previous, and those 2 pieces are cut-offs of these boards, which means I'm using just a little bit more than 1 8-foot board to get the number that I'm going to get. So what you want to do is a little math. Alright, so you see I've got some marks here, and this piece, and this piece, yet they have not been cut into their lengths, are going to be for the top. And the top is a little bit over, or right about 3/4 of an inch, which means if you do that plus a blade width for each cut, you're getting about 11, and I might get 12 in this particular board. 11, 11, 11. So there's 33 tops that I'm going to get out of this section. I did not cut it because I still have to plane it down to this thickness, which it is not quite there. You can see it's kind of a little bit thicker than what I need. The reason I stopped at this thickness, as you can see, my side pieces are almost there. And this section, or this stack right here, has the potential to be 1, 2, 3, 4 sets of sides. So if I've got 33, I'm going to need 66 sides at least. So that's what I'm shooting for here. And so when you do this, these are about 3/8. So by the time you add the width of the blade, that's almost a 1/2 inch. So if I got a 11-inch board, I'm looking at possibly 22, 44, and 22, 44, and 66. Something with the 3 pieces, and I've got an extra. I'm going to run out more than I need. And let's see, on the bottoms, you can see I've got them, that one cut at the exact length. This one was a spare or an extra leftover that I was going to make as bottoms, but I didn't because I had more than I needed. And it's a little bit longer, which means I'm not going to use this area up here with the knot, but I can get some across here. So if these are a 1/2 inch, around about a 1/2 inch thick, and I start taking them, again, I'm looking at 2 high, if you can see that, 2 high, like such, 1, 2, or 1, 2, I believe it is. And then you're talking about so 10 across, at least 20 here, and maybe 20 there, is close to 40. So I might have to get some more bottoms here. Maybe I'll make these a little smaller. They don't need to be that thick, but out of these boards I need to create enough strips for the bottoms so that I can have enough. The reason I stopped here to bring you up to speed was just to get you to understand that at this point all I've done was clean up the boards and start separating pieces based on what I need for my projects. So the next thing I need to do is take this board and these, and plane them down to make the dimension I need for each of these pieces, and that's what I'm going to do next. I'm not going to show you that because I'm showing you enough planing. That's what I did the other day, all that sawdust there for cleaning these up. What I'll do is pause this because my battery's about to die on this phone, and I will come back once I've got all these planed and cut in the right lengths. And then what we're going to do is set up the table saw, because the real fun of this video, my friends, Rooster, is going to be showing you how to make these, especially these. I got a trick for you. Uh-oh. Hen, get back in there. Hen, get back in there. Get back in there. I think it's time to clip wings. We'll catch you here in just a minute. You better behave there, big boy. Chicken soup. Chicken soup. It's gotten warm enough out here that they come out for a cleansing flight. You get out of my way there, big boy. You hear me? Get out of my way. Alright, so chicken soup, I'm telling you, talk too much. I like that little latch I made right there. That's an excellent latch. So let's take a quick little review. Alright, so I've trimmed up the pieces, and I've got, oops, pick this thing up. This is my scrap, but it's not scrap. Remember, this will be kindling for a wood start fire. But we're down to the basics here. And we have 3 pieces. Hold on, let me see if I can do this with a phone and my hand. 3 pieces that are planed down to 1 1/8. Let's see what we got here. And you can see 1 1/8 on that top bar. So those 3 pieces are going to be the top bars. Like I said, hopefully I can get about 11 in each one of these once I get done running. We've got to run these little notches right here. I got 4 pieces that I've left at 1, if you can see that, 1 1/4. These are going to be the sides. Let's see. You can see that right there. They're actually a little bit narrower than those. Just a tiny bit. That's okay. That's okay. It will work. And these, I left them at 1 1/4 also, because these are going to get ripped in half for the bottoms. Now, see, that's not quite it. That was it. I think these guys right here I made are quite thick. They're much thicker than the frames that I've purchased. I don't think we need it as thick, but you just don't know when to shut up there, dude. Alright, so what we got to do next is we're gonna make each and every one of these pieces. The fun part is doing them on the table saw there. There's some neat little tricks here that we're gonna have to learn. For one, for putting the notches in. Like I said, this part will be fatter because hopefully this time I don't mess up my dimensions, which I did last time. And we'll have a little rabbit that goes in there and it'll fit. These will come out of these, and you notice they've got a radius here and then a taper down and a notch. And this notch will make to suit what we cut here. So it really doesn't matter. What we can do is rip these out first. They're real easy to do because these are just, as you can see, basically just long squares. Ooh, that one's a little warped, isn't it? A little warped. That's okay. Bees won't care. And this is the more challenging one, the sides, because of the taper down on it. And the top has got some tricks to it too. But let's get to it. I think I'm going to set up, what do we want to do first? What do we want to do? Let's knock these out of the way because they will be the easiest. And what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to set the frame, or set the table saw at a width to come and put a slice right down the middle, right here. We're going to cut it right down the middle, and we'll do this one. Once we get a deep cut into it using the table saw at a reasonably high height, then I'll come back and I'll turn it on its side and I'll start ripping them out. And I know I got to have a bunch of them here, so I'm going to alter this dimension, and you can do this on your own. You just got to make sure that you know how wide you're setting things off the fence in order to create that little notch in there. It's not that hard to do, is to create that notch in there, but you got to know what it is. Every time you do this, you could do it differently. It really doesn't matter. What matters is there's a bar across there that holds the side pieces together. So let me get these made out real quick, and I will show you what I've come up with. Let me show you the technique that I'm using to make these lower slots. And like I said, they can vary in size. These are the last two I just ran through, and I don't want to get too far into this section here because of the knot, but those I think will still do. Alright, so I've set my fence off of the table saw at what should be the center, and it's not perfect, but what I'm doing is I'm running the board through this way and then I'm running it through that way, and what that's leaving me with is, if I can show you here, there we go, just a hair, oops, focus, just a hair over a half, which is okay, which means what I'm going to end up with is the width here is 5/8 by a hair under, about a 16th under 5/8. It doesn't matter. I've got a lot of uniform pieces, and that's what I really care about, is that all these are pretty much the same. So I still got to run out all of these. I did as much as I could with this. So once I run them through run the board through this way. Then I'll flip it around and run it this way. And then I run it through this way twice, and I get 2 pieces off each time. And then I turn it over and I run it again on the vertical to keep that edge moving along the board and splitting the board, so that I've only got one fence setting to create those pieces. And like I said, that width can vary just a little bit. It doesn't matter until you go to make these. And I think we're going to make these last, so that when we make these, where'd you go? There it is. So when we make this notch right here and that notch right there, each one of them we can set the fence to make sure that we run them out on there to a snug fit. That way you just basically build it to fit. And like I said, these dimensions doesn't really matter. What matters is that you're paying attention to what you're building to build it to fit. I'm telling you, chicken soup. All right, so let me finish running these out, and then we're going to set up to start running the tops. I want to get these done and these done before we do that, and we're running low on daylight, folks, so I better get going. Hang on, folks. All right, I just finished those up. Let's take a quick look. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sun's going down quickly here. 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, 38, 40, 2, 4, 6, 8, 48. And I had 2 of them that were a little bit thinner. They might be able to be used. So 48 and maybe 50 out of that. That's more than I have top, so I know I'm good on that. T's pulling in the plants because it's shades hitting them. Hey, have you unplugged? I guess we got to unplug here. All right, so, and then it's time to put some grooves on that. Let me get set up for that, and I'll show you what we need to do. All right, so I'm trying to get this set up, and what we got to do, if you can see that, is we need to set the fence so that shoulder is in the right place. And it's hard to see the depth right there, but the depth is right here, so I got to set the depth to be what it is. Like I said, it doesn't have to be a perfect dimension in any one way or the other, but as you can see, that's what I need. I need to set it there for that depth, and then we're going to move this fence in as we do this to widen this notch out right here until we've got it wide enough for these slats to fit into it. And that I like to have these about 3/8 of an inch thick. So we're gonna work on here. So each one of these boards here, each one of these is going to have to get run through on here, here, and here, and here. So I've got to run all 3 of these boards 4 times real quick. Let me show you what that looks like once I get that done. So I've run all 4 of them, or all 3 of them. You see the 2 notches on either end, here and here. And now all I got to do is carefully, just because you see those 2, I'm going to carefully bump that over about a blade width, and I'm gonna run them all again, and I'm going to open this up until I got about 3/8 of an inch of a width here. It doesn't matter exactly. 3/8 is a good width, but what matters is that when I go to rip these for width, that I set my fence so that I've got a snug fit, and that's what I'll be looking at. I'll be checking the fit along the way. So let me get that run out, and you'll see what I got. All right, so I've got those run out, and I'm going to, let's see if I can do this. check it. Alright, so the last run I passed made it a little bit gappy. That's okay. So you can see how the one fits in there a little bit, and that's why I say don't worry about it, because if you don't have high-end table saw and equipment, and you know, you might be doing what I'm doing and working with a cheap contractor saw that it's not exactly easy to get it perfect. So the way to do that is to creep up on what you're doing on your final cuts with the fence, which is what we're going to do here. Now, there's one other thing that we can do, and it's not that big a deal. Some companies cut these corners off to round them off, and I did it before on my first batch that I made by sanding them. So once they were all cut, it was like, oh, now I need to sand them. But as I'm doing this, what we're trying to do is much work in one stroke as possible. So what I could do is kick the saw blade out, set the fence over to where I just nick that corner off all the way down and all the way down. And I think I've got enough time. Running low on light here, but let me see if I can't get that done on all the corners so that I end up with a nice little tapered end out here, and we'll see what that looks like. Alright, I got these kind of corner trimmed out. What do you think? I kind of like the profile. It works for me. Now what I need to do to finish these guys off is to come up with my width or thickness of this board. And these, I believe I had set at just a hair under 3/4. I think I'm going to do that the same here. Let's see what we got here. If I lock that down, where are we at? That's even a little thinner. Let's see. We'll open it up just to here. Now, let's see, the thinner I go, the more I'm going to get out of this board. However, I don't want to substitute strength. Let's see how we're doing here. Alright, so if you can see it, the 3/4 mark is inside the middle of the blade, just a little bit to the off the left edge of it, but that's about where we want. So let me run out and let me see how many I can get out of all three of these, because that's going to determine the amount that I actually get out of this whole game. So hang on. Alright, so now that that's done and over with, running out of light here. Sun's hitting the horizon pretty quickly. Of course, it's what you get when we're next to the winter solstice. But I'm still out here working, you know. I can't complain. Girls came out and flew, and I'm out here doing this. So let's take a quick look at what I got with these. If you do a full count here, I've got 13 out of each one of those boards, which is a little bit more than I thought, which gives me 39. And then I got a couple of pieces that are variable width. They're less than what the table saw fence was set out. So I can still make some out of this. So technically I could make some out of this. They won't be the exact uniform shape of all the others, and that's okay. But these look pretty good. What do you think? Not bad. Not bad. Not bad. So there's still one task left to be done. I need to run a kerf cut with the table saw right down the middle here so that I can put the little oak strip in there, right? But let's do it. Let's do a count. I'm starting to get close to some numbers here of yield. How many frames am I going to yield out of this? So let's just say I use one of those. It's making an even 40. I know I had almost 50 of these, but how many complete frames do I get is going to be 40. So 40-ish. We're going to make it a nice round number, 40 of those. And I know I can get 40 sides out of this once I'm done creating that. All right, now let's look at the cost, just so that you can roll these numbers through your head and why it's so much better to do this by yourself. Make your own stuff. All right, the 8-foot board cost me about $7.50 for that 8-foot 2x12. Then I had a little extra scrap. So if you have to buy the wood, then for the amount of wood here, let's just round it up to about $9, giving an extra $1.50 or whatever, in order to have the wood that length, just roughly. And then we're going to need the 20-pound test, and at Walmart I got, and no, I don't like shopping there, but that's the only place I could get it around here, was fishing line at Walmart. 20-pound test of the inexpensive stuff was about $6 for 600 yards. So that was about $6. So we're up to about 15. Then you're going to need some piece of oak. Don't ask me why, the bees like it, but some piece of oak there. And it probably won't cost you about $1 or $2 for some scrap if you can't find some or make some to rip out in. Hush up, please. Those little strips. So we'll throw in a $1 or $2 for that. And then we need water-resistant glue. Titebond 3 is what I used on this in order to glue everything up. And you're not going to use a whole tube of it or a whole container of it. So I'm going to say maybe, a tube might cost you $7 or $8. You're not going to use maybe a half of it to glue all of this up. So maybe $4. So I want to take you to around roughly $20 in cost for all the materials on this. $20 in cost, 40 frames. Anybody do the math real quick in their heads? How much does that cost a frame? About 50 cents a frame. Roughly about 50 cents a frame. When you go up to the hardware store up here, and to buy a box of the Little Giant with the foundations in them, and I'm going to tell you, the bees don't like the foundations, as they prefer to make their own. And if you wish to get the wax off of it, this is the better way to do it. So we're going to have to pause here. I'll pick up another day, and I will show you how to put the notch in and do the sides. And there you go, folks. We got a little bit accomplished this afternoon. What do you think, Shadow? It's a beautiful morning. And we're back here for the second part, hopefully. I'm not going to separate these, I don't think. We'll just do one long video. Oh my goodness, what a beautiful morning. We do have some clouds working away. Fortunately, there's plenty of sun. Whoo, bright up there on the panels. So we're getting some equipment run, and so I'm going to run off the generator so my freezers and stuff aren't interrupted. A little cloud moving through there. Supposed to get up to 50. Today's Saturday, so it's been a little bit, and it's beautiful out, and I've got some time to hey, go away, cloud. I got some time to finish these, and here comes the fun part. So we're almost there on our frames. What we have left to do is make the sides, and we got some fun tricks to show you there. And then I need one last thing, or a couple things to do on the tops. I need to run out a little groove, as you see right there, and all I need to do is set the blade width to the right depth, set the fence, and run each one of those across it so that I get that little notch you can see right there, that little curve cut. That's not the fun part. So I'm going to knock that and get that out of the way, and then when I get done with that, the fun part is going to be teaching you, maybe for those of you who don't have a lot of experience on a table saw, how you can make a very nice curved cut right there. And it's kind of tricky. There's things that you can do on a table saw that most people don't know about, and that's being able to cove cut or make some cove shapes in boards. It's possible to do some molding that way too. And I've done some for gun cabinets that I built, where I did some really nice molding on the top of it using the table saw to make cove cuts and do some shapes with it. And what was that, Shadow? What was that? Did you hear something? Now I hear it. Oh, I see. Mittens way over there. Mittens. So let's get started. Let me get it fired up. I'm going to go ahead and run these real quick, and then we're going to get set up, and I'm going to show you the setup to run the cove on these side pieces. It's quite fun. Hang on. Let's see here. When we got sun, we get to working out here. I tell you what, she's in there vacuuming. You can do everything you need to that you would normally do in a normal house, in even a shop, with just that much solar. It's amazing. I love it. The freedom is spectacular. So what do you think about that? Pretty good, I think. I like it. We're not done yet. Still got some more stuff to do, but they're coming along and got those all done. So again, the next step we want to do is start working on these sides, and this is going to be the challenging part. First thing I'm going to set up for is creating that cove cut right there. And many people don't know that you can do this, but I've got it set up, and as you can see, I've got the top of the blade as close to the center of the board as possible. Now, it's not going to be exactly perfect, and it doesn't need to be. It can be up and down just a little bit. It doesn't really matter. But what I'm looking to do is get the widest radius that I can on the sides of these side pieces. So there's a trick to this, and the trick is this. You only have, let's see if I can show you. You only have just that tooth that will cut. So when I go to do this, I'm going to have to run this board sideways across. I've set up a 4-foot level, or 3-foot level I think it is, and a couple of clamps to act as a fence, because your standard fence will not work on here. And here's the tricky part. One, we're going to have to keep orientated so that we're looking at the same thing. So I'm going to put a little bit of an X, a little mark down here on this corner, and here, and here, and here, because I'm going to have to run these repeatedly. And each time I run it across here, I'm going to nibble just a little bit off the underside there. And let's see, once I do that, I'll have to flip it over and run both sides on all of these. Then I'm going to crank up the saw blade and raise the saw blade just about a half a tooth. And we're going to do this multiple times to slowly cut out the cove on us. It's not a fast process. You want to take your time in doing so, and you want to pay attention to your orientation of everything. So let me make one quick pass and then show you what that looks like. Alright, there's a first quick pass. And one of the things you want to be very careful when you do this is because of your cutting with the grain, you get long, see if I can find it. Oh, there's a lot of it on the ground there. There's a long, curly, long, stringy fibers that come off of it because it's not cross-cut against the grain. And it tends to want to bunch up under here. I also have an issue with my particular cheap table saw right here. Is you see there's a little difference in the depth cut right here. That's because when I get to right here, I have to lift it up just a tiny little bit. But that's okay. It's not going to hurt the overall process of this. But you can see by the good sun angle here. and you can see the way it cuts, and I like to have just a slight angle on it. And when you change this angle, you change the radius of this, so you can actually make it go very concave and elliptical based on the profile of the saw blade. But the trick is this: you need to be slow on this, very slow, and take your time, because these stringy chips that come off of here want to bunch up underneath it. So if you do this, take your time, and you're going to do it at little nibbles. So like right now, I just went through and I did that. I'm not going to raise it until I'm done with all of those three. But the next time I raise it, I'm only going to raise it just a little bit. And then I'll make a pass. And I'll raise it again, and I'll make a pass on all of these boards, both sides, until I get the depth of cut that I want, which should be somewhere along those lines. Once we get that, then we'll have to make these notch outs, and I'll show you that here. But let me finish this one. Let me run them all through, get them all done, so now you understand the process. Let me get that step completed, and we'll be right back with you. Alright, so let's take a look at it in the sunlight there. And it's not as true as I'd like if I was doing some molding or furniture. Sanding that smooth, getting something that has a shape for similar shape, and sanding it, that would clean it up. I actually think I went a little deeper than I did before. The last little crank up I did on that might have been just a hair too much. Not really, but it's a little narrower than the last batch. Won't hurt nothing, but I just realized that, oh, wait, that's a little bit more. But that's okay. It will still work. I still will only trim what I need to on here when we hit the bandsaw, and we'll see that here in a little bit, but we still need to make these notches. So the first notch I want to make is to go ahead and make a notch for this bottom piece, and we're going to do that the same way. I'm going to get it set up where I'm running them through across the blade like we did before. My blade depth will be the thickness of, we'll probably go with the narrow side. Remember, it wasn't quite square, oops, but good enough. So what we're going to do is we're going to center the blade in the bottom down there where that X is. Once we get it centered, I'm going to slowly bump the fence out and widen this just until it gets wide enough for this. And I'm going to start checking it really close, and I'm going to be very careful about moving that final adjustment, because one little bump too much, and then I could make this a lot wider. Then I make the groove down there a lot wider. We got to do that for this width, and then I got to do the top for this width. And this is a little wider, and that's why these side pieces were left wider, so that when we make them, that they'll have enough room, enough wood there on top. So you'll see it, there'll be a notch right here, and that should fit down over top of that. So let me get that run out, and we'll see what it looks like then. Hey folks, you do have to be careful when you're running that last little nibble that you take on this, because when I did, the first adjustment I got was pretty good. The problem is, and you might not be able to see it in here, I wasn't able to run both sides. I made an adjustment, and I ran this side, and this is just a tiny bit thinner than this. I ran this side and I checked it, and I found, oh, that's perfect fit for the narrow, because we have the wider and narrow, and that's a perfect fit for the narrow side. So I had to stop, but it means I'm just slightly off center, which means when I do the cheek cuts on these on the bandsaw, what we're going to find is that this side's going to be just a little bit wider on here, and it's not that huge a deal. I'm micro picking it here. This one I ran through and tried to readjust it, and it's a good thing. Hush up, rooster. It's a good thing one side is wider, because what happened was when I ran it through on both sides, you can see a little bit of a gap. So fortunately I could turn it this way, and it's still a tiny bit loose through there, but that's okay. The glue will do its job. Same thing on this one, so that's the wide side. And then I finally readjusted it, and the fit I wanted on here was kind of snug, but it's loose down here all the way. This is pretty good. You can see how that fits in there. And then now the next step for me is to run, whew, get out of there, nice and tight there, to get out of there. So what I'm just going to have to make sure is like all of these will be used for one set, because when I go to do this, I'm only going to be able to glue this stick in one direction. So I'll have to match all of these and all of these and all of these to each frame, and this one itself, because they're slightly different widths. That just happens to be the way I try to do that. Now we need to do the top side of the sidebar, the depth and width to go around there. So let me go ahead, set those up and get them run and show you how that goes together. Okay, let's take a look here. I'll tell you what, it's really tricky to try and get that last minor adjustment for that thickness right there for these grooves, but I think I did a little bit better job on the top. That it's hard to see, but I gotta check. It's not much for me to check, but it looks like I'm just there. That one's a little snug. That's a little loose. That's just snug. And that's just snug. You just barely fit that in there. And I think that's what we want. So the next step is going to be to take them down to 3/8. So what I need to do is set my blade, the width that fits snugly into that groove. Now it's about 3/8 ish, but that's what we'll do. So I'm gonna run the saw blade up tall enough to completely cut it, which means I need to be a little higher than that, and then I need to set blade width. What do I have to do that with? No, I can't do that. I need to see if I can just eyeball that right there. It's got to come in a little bit, so there we go. Let me run one, and that's a little narrow. I got to put the phone down. Let me get one cut and set, and then I'll show you. All right, I think I got it. Let's show you how I got this. See if I can do this one-handed. Slide that. They're kind of snug, but there you go. See how that works, folks? Pretty nice. I probably could have planed these down a little thinner or left these a little wider, because I'm thinking, let me get a couple of these. Well, I can't, because I got to run them a little bit more. There should be a little bit more of a gap here on the side, so that when these go together, the bees can come over top of them. But it's not necessary. It's not necessary. I don't know. Maybe I'll tweak it. But you see how it goes there. And then the bottom stick is going to go. Mind you, this one is a little bit off, but all the others are tight. Okay, so there you go. Now I got to run all of these, and because I got a slight variation in the bottom gaps on these, I'm going to have to keep these grouped together separately, so that when I go to glue them up, I don't have to fight with one goes one way and the other goes the other way. So, and the bottom is there. Okay, there we go. There's my snug fit. Anyway, so I'll have to do that so that they work the way they're supposed to. It's a lot to keep up with. It's a whole lot smoother if you have a higher quality equipment, of course, and you have a shop that allows you to make much more precise incremental adjustments to your tools. But you can do it, and you see I'm doing it here, and it'll all get glued up, and these will all work fine, and the bees will be happy. So let me go ahead and get all of these cut, and we'll check back with you here in just a bit. Oh, well, that took a little bit here, but we got her done. And as you can see, I've mismatched a couple of these in the wrong stack, but each one of these boards yielded about 21 slats or sides, and we got 40 top bars, and I think we have 50 of those, but there's about 84 of those, which would give us enough for about 42, which, you know, like I said, I had an extra one or two of those. Maybe I can squeeze together another frame or two, but that's 40 frames plus. Not bad. Not bad for the cost. 40 frames for, by the time we get done, $20. You cannot beat that. You know, 50 cents each. Let's see. I think I got most of the understandings, the knowledge, the way to make them. The tricky parts are these and those. The sides, of course, the bottoms are just a strip. So the tricky parts are the top bars and the side bars, and I think I pretty much gave you the way to do them on a table saw. If you do not have a bandsaw, there are other methods that you could use to take the side off. One is to attempt to run it through a table saw only a certain distance and then pull it back out. I don't like that idea. Table saw is kind of the best way to do it. The other way would be to take a belt sounder, and before you cut these in half, sand the cheek down. That would be a little bit more work, but you could get it done that way. See, what else could you do? If you had a router table, you could set up for a plunge cut or a edge cut on the router table, where you could just take off. Let's see, that's the narrow end. You could just take off a strip. You could feed it in on an edge trimming bit, and that's set for a certain depth, and take it and feed it in till you get to the cove, and then flip it over and do the same thing again like we're going to do with the bandsaw. That would actually leave a little smoother edge, but I'm going to do it on the bandsaw, and then we'll get them glued up. The only other step to that afterwards is to make some strips. I don't think I need to show you how to do that, but that was done on the bandsaw. It can be done on the table saw, but that's a lot of wasted wood. You want a thin blade, something that's going to cut them thin, and you're going to just make something that's about I want to say a 1/4 inch wide by just a hair under a blade width thick. And I like oak. The bees like the oak too. And then I came back and, of course, melted some of the beeswax and took a paintbrush and painted that on. And then took some 20. So you get the 20-pound test. And I did basically a figure 8 configuration, but basically that leaves me with 2 X's instead of just 1 X or 3 lines. I kind of like this. Better netting. But there you go, folks. I hope you enjoyed, learned, and maybe you'll put some of these together for yourselves, for your hives, instead of having to buy them. We need to get the manufacturing back into our local communities, so local woodworkers could do this, and make some fairly decent money, because if you take into account that Little Giant, which is the biggest producer of these, will sell 5 of them to you in a box for $30. That's $6 a piece, right? $6 a piece. I'm making them for 50 cents a piece. So my cost is about, $2.50. So there's $27.50 in labor. If you're doing it now, mind you, the entire process here will take me about a day and a half, 12-ish, 10 to 12 hours to do all of this, to work it all out. And that's not too bad, because I still got a lot of string in it, running the strings through it. That takes assembling and putting the strings on. That's some time-consuming work. And there's always somebody in the community that could do that as well. It doesn't have to be just the woodworker. The woodworker could produce the parts, and then you could have somebody in your community put them together. We got to rethink our local industries, and this is something I'm looking at from my area, because frames last a few years, but they don't last forever. They are frames are a consumable item, and they are made with a renewable resource. So, all right, folks, I thought I'd go ahead and show you the next step here, and how I set up for the for taking the sides off like that. So you make sure you definitely keep your alignments correct and which notch is which, because the bottom one needs to be smaller than the top one. And what I've done is taken a piece of aluminum angle iron and just clamped it down, and I set it so that my blade is just off the inside edge of that slot. I don't want to get right up against it, because I need to leave a little bit more meat right here, because I could get that part just a little bit too thin, and I don't want to do that, and that's just fine right there. I'm good with that. So let me show you. Hold your ears. And that's how it's done. Let me step out here in the light where you can see it. Pretty good. You can see this is off that first board, and you notice what I was saying about I was offset in my thickness, and one side was going to be thicker than the other. This is why you got to be careful. Now this will hold. What you just want to make sure is that when you put these pieces in, either on the top bar or the bottom bar, you don't want that piece so thick that it splits it right along the edge there. You don't want to split it. It's okay if it's a little looser. You can always put just a little bit more glue in there to kind of fill in the gap. But there you go. That's a beautiful side piece. Have one more operation to show you, but I can't do that until I get them all glued up. So I can probably just tell you and show you on this frame right here. There is a kind of an angled notch right here where you got to cut out. And when I get done gluing these up, and only when I've glued them up, will I come in here, and what I'll do is I'll come up here and do a quick bump against it, and I'm very carefully cut about a half a depth, not quite a half, almost a half a depth. And then I'll come back and I'll come at an angle, and I'll make that cut. I'll make those two cuts by hand, which means those little tabs will vary ever so slightly in thickness, but it'll get it done. Again, like I said, all the different frames that I've seen and purchased, they are varying a little bit on their own. So not too bad. Not too bad at all. I think once I get two of these side by side that I'll have at least a 1/4 inch between there, which will be enough room for one B width to come through here, I think. And I think it'll be fine. Probably could have planed those down just a tiny bit thinner, but it'll work. All right, folks. Now I think I'm good. I think you've got all the ideas and understandings. And on that note, happy beekeeping.